Hey, what's up? I'm sure you've seen these manual machines popping up all over the internet, and they look like a lot of fun and looks like a cool way to develop your skills, but I think there's something that we're overlooking that could actually help your riding out a lot more. I'm going to show you today how to build a different kind of setup, which I think is going to help your bike handling skills and your balance substantially more. I'm going to show you how to make a balance beam that has multiple different settings on it, and I'm also going to show you some different techniques to practice on the beam. So first things first, we're going to head inside, we're going to grab all the elements we need to make this thing, and then we're going to take it back and build it up and get riding. Enough wood to make 2 balance beams, not bad at all. All right, we've got our required materials. Now it's time to piece this thing together and get it going. I actually have 2 separate balance beams that I'm going to make, and I was able to make it out of essentially 3 boards. You could probably simplify this process by just buying one 12-foot board, and then you can cut these lengths to make both foots on either end. But because I was getting 2 balance beams for 2 different varying levels of difficulty, I ended up getting 2 8-foot beams instead. But if you want to simplify this process, you could get out of there with just 1 total beam. So let's get into it. I'm going to start by cutting 2 2-foot legs, which will go on each end of the balance beam. And then it's a pretty simple screw on each end to make your basic balance beam. And then we could tweak it by flipping it up on top of those 2 feet once we get the ball rolling and once we feel comfortable at that first height. But first things first, let's get it cut, let's get it dialed in, and let's get that first ride across it, and we'll take it from there. Now, because I'm making 2 separate balance beams, I took my 8-foot balance beam, marked off every 2 feet, and I'm going to cut it into 4 pieces. This will give me 2 feet for each balance beam, and that way I don't have to worry about switching between the 2 different planks in the middle. So I'm going to cut this first one up into 4 pieces. I'm going to have enough feet to balance out 2 separate balance beams. This is the hard part. The hard part. Okay, so the hard part's done. We've cut our 8-foot beam into 4 2-foot lengths. Those are going to be the feet for our 2 balance beams. Now we're going to take the brackets that we got at the store and we're going to attach the feet to the beams themselves. Okay, so we're going to start at the lowest setting, which is going to be the feet of the balance beam on the floor with the balance beam itself. It's all just square on the floor. That means you're only 4 inches up, and so if you fall off the balance beam for any reason, you're not going to smash your rotors. Chance of injury much lower than at a higher height, obviously, and it'll be the first kind of foundational balance that we start with. Once you then get comfortable rolling on and off of that, the next thing will be to add 4 inches in height to it. So the balance beam will technically be 8 inches in the air. It'll take a little bit more effort to climb up onto it, a little bit higher consequence, but you learn different things at different heights. So we're gonna start making round 1, and then as you get comfortable, all you have to do is switch the bracket of where it's installed, and you can change the height of the balance beam itself. So let's start with round 1, and then we'll move on to round 2. Success! I've officially cut and screwed together my first balance beam. This one is 4 inches wide. The feet are right on the ground, so it's pretty easy to ride up and over. And the next one I'm going to build is actually going to be a little bit thinner. This one's my more advanced one, not any higher off the ground, just with a thinner board in the middle. But now I'm going to have 2 separate balance beams to practice with. One to get really comfortable riding the basics, and I can also adjust the height, and one that's just a little bit thinner that's going to help me really fine-tune my balance skills on skinny ledges and stuff. So I'm going to put the second one together really quick, and then I'm going to have my 2 balance beams. We can go into the techniques for some balance practice after that. Okay, so we're totally done building our balance beams. We had an 8-foot length that we cut into 4 pieces, which we used for the legs of both balance beams, and I have one here that's about 3.5 to 4 inches wide, and this little guy right here is about 1.5 inches wide, so actually thinner than my tires. This is like a normal rail, I suppose, but really the goal here is to just develop my finer points of my balance, and just to give me something that's consistent, that's not super high off the ground, pretty low consequence, but a good way to build confidence. So both of these are going to kind of serve their own purposes. This one here I can actually build up about 4 inches higher than even it is right now, and give me a little bit more height to build confidence at height as well. But now I have these 2, and now it's time to practice our balance techniques with the 2. So here we go. Now I guess one of the main questions you're gonna ask is which bike should I use to ride over these balance beams? And my answer would be whichever bike that you're riding the most frequently. And you know, I guess if you really had to nail it down, maybe some kind of hardtail of some sort. The less suspension you have in here, the better feel you're gonna get for your wheels and for your balance. But obviously, you want these skills to transfer onto any bike. So whichever bike you ride the most is what you should practice this on. I'm actually gonna use my Inspired 4Play because this is the one I normally ride, But because I have these balance beams, I expect to ride them on pretty much every bike in my quiver. So totally up to you which bike you want to ride. I suggest if you have a hardtail, start with that. That way you get perfect feel of where the bike is on the balance beams, but totally up to you. I'm gonna start with this one, not because it's a trials bike, but just because it's the one that I ride the most and I wanna be the most dialed with my balance. So up to you, but for me, today it's gonna be the Inspired 4Play. All right, it's go time. I've got a handful of drills that I'm gonna show you on the wider board, and then I'm gonna try a lot of the same ones on the thinner one as I work my way up. Then when I get comfortable, I'm also going to raise the level of the other one up, and I'll show you how to do that. Also, just for what it's worth, and before I show you some of this other stuff, I wanna let you know that I have 2 playlists that I've made on my channel. One is for developing your mountain bike technical skills, and one is for developing your trial skills. They'll be at the end of this video, but I'll also link to them above as well. And yeah, if you want to develop your riding, that's definitely the best way to do it. Okay, let me give you a little preview of what we're going to do here on this balance beam. There's 4 different techniques we're going to try out. First thing is just getting up and over, riding from end to end on the balance beam. The second thing we're going to do, ride up onto the balance beam and slow down and go as slow as you possibly can. If you can go to a stop and then kick it a little bit to get the bike going again, that's perfect. After that, we're going to get onto the balance beam, slow down to a stop, and track stand. Try to hold your balance on the actual board and then continue on. So the 4th thing we're gonna do, we're gonna line up parallel to the balance beam. We're gonna put our front wheel on the balance beam, and we're gonna try to pivot and put our back wheel onto the balance beam and continue riding. The trick to doing this is actually as soon as your back wheel hits the balance beam, you wanna continue riding. You wanna use that momentum to keep you going, and that'll help you kind of maintain your balance. If you're going static, balance to balance, and then trying to start up your speed, it's actually really challenging. The reason for doing this move in particular is that you're not just riding balance beams wherever you go. When you're on the trail, it's not as pretty as this kind of setup here. You're riding on a rock, on a log, or on some kind of like real skinny trail. It's not as clear cut and perfect as what you see here. So being able to pivot onto the thing you want to ride is actually maybe as important as the balance you have when you're on it. So that's why we're going to practice the skill from both right and left sides. So those are the 4 things that we're going to practice on this balance beam, and then we're going to try it on the skinny one as well. Hey, before I forget, a couple things that'll make this way easier for you. Look ahead of where you're going to ride. So for me, I look at where the T is from where the feet meet the balance beam. That's the best way to kind of keep going in a straight line. If you're running into trouble where you're kind of teetering off one side or another, try to drop one pedal lower than the other, or just bring your center of gravity down as low as you possibly can. If you're up high, you're kind of swapping left and right, where if you're down lower, you're concentrated and there's a bit more weight just evenly distributed. So try those few things if you're really struggling with this one. A lot of times it just comes down to doing it a bunch of times, but those 2 things can really help you a lot. So now that we're feeling super comfortable at this low setting, I'm actually gonna take the wider one and take it up 4 inches. So I'm gonna just change the brackets and we'll be good to go. Okay, so we switched the brackets here. We made it just a little bit taller. It's still not tall enough to actually damage your disc brakes if you should fall off for any reason, but it has just enough consequence to kind of make things interesting. It's a little bit harder to get up onto, and maybe it's a little scary to be 4 inches higher. It's definitely an easy way to add some consequence to this without getting too crazy. Now just do the same exact drills that you did before, just a little bit of added intensity to your drills, but really same principles apply. Look at the very end of this as you're riding and keep focused on that. Keep your momentum up, and yeah, have fun with it too. The other side bonus is having something set up like this. You can put your kiddos on it as well and have a pretty good time with this little balance beam. So it's not totally selfish to have one of these in your garage. So I think we're off to a pretty good start with this balance beam setup here. I've actually created a couple other tutorial videos for your mountain bike technical skills, and if you want to go all the way there, you can learn some trial skills as well. I'm going to make some playlists and put them here and here, and if you want to check them out, please do. Also, if you haven't subscribed already, please do give us a like, and I'm going to keep making tutorials and all kinds of technical riding videos that will hopefully be helpful for you. Thanks again for watching.